What is up? Welcome back to Fudge Muppet. My name is Scott and I'm here with Michael, and today we've got tons of Starfield stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it's been a while since we first got Starfield because we got Starfield at the earliest point possible, I suppose. I mean, we weren't testing the game, and doing bug fixes and that kind of things, but we had review access, and, when it came out on September 1st for the pre-order access, we already had over 300 hours of gameplay, together, combined. Those are combined hours. I don't think it's possible to do for one person.
I did say that in the review. I was like, between Michael and I combined, it was 300 hours. But now individually, we've played even much more compared to what we had before. But the reason I say that as well in the review, the 300 hours combined, is because obviously we're sharing notes, comparing and contrasting. We're able to see two different experiences essentially, and doing the quest lines differently and things like that, and then put those experiences together in a single review.
Yeah, and look, as far as spoilers goes in this video, we will be avoiding spoilers for the main story and the faction plot kind of stuff, but we'll still be talking about kind of base stuff that's around the place and how to join the factions and things like that, and kind of which way you can go with it. So if it was Skyrim, we would and let's just say you could actually change the Thieves Guild. We'd say, yeah, and there's the Thieves Guild, and you can play it as more of a Robin Hood kind of thief, or you can play it as more of a criminal kind of thief. These kinds of vibes and things we will be talking about when it comes to factions and things like that. Obviously, we'll be talking about the cities and towns, the exploration, different things we've seen. However, we just won't be going into this is what happens in the main story, or in this faction plot, it's revealed that this happened. So you're relatively safe if you're already playing Starfield, but if you just don't want to hear any of it, then I suppose don't watch a 2 weeks later video on our new thoughts about it, because we're going to be talking about it. But 2 weeks later, I would say one of the biggest things that we have got now is just even more conviction that this is a good game. I would say briefly that the hate that Starfield's getting is not really warranted. I think that if anyone knows about the flaws of the game, it would actually be us. And I could make a video about it, and we'll talk about some of the flaws, but those flaws, in our opinion, make Starfield, not a perfect game. But it's this is a Skyrim, essentially. This is a sick game. When Skyrim came out, it didn't even have mounted combat on launch. But as I said in a tweet, I wouldn't be oh, I can't take my horse into Whiterun, so 4 out of 10. And look, if you bought it because you wanted the most hyper-realistic, space flight simulator that was all about being in the spaceship and all that kind of stuff, I get it, that's fine. But as a, BGS game channel, that's what we were worried about. I didn't want to spend 50% of the game in a ship and just be flying around through space. You look at any sci-fi universe, space is where, generally speaking, outside of the really cool space battles and stuff, which you can do in Starfield, space is boring. It's empty. That's the whole point. The cool stuff, you look at Star Wars, happens on the planets. Look at Mass Effect, the cool stuff is on the planets.
I mean, even yeah, exactly. Even Star Trek, Firefly, everything's always happening on the planets, or it's actually on the ship as a hub. But
or the ship stations, which you can go to and explore in Starfield. So we wanted Skyrim in space, and we got Skyrim in space. So we're happy about that.
Yeah, I think that's too. It's part of it's if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. It's part of the thing with, if you like Bethesda RPGs and what they actually give, because there is sometimes you can look at a Bethesda's RPG and be oh, well, in this one metric, say in previous cases, role playing, it doesn't have a lot of good choice and consequence here, or it doesn't have that. XYZ. Bethesda does a really good job of taking lots of different systems and combining all of those things together, that maybe on a one specific thing by itself, it's oh, it doesn't do the ship thing as well, it doesn't do the choice and consequence as well, or something like that. But when it's stitched all together in this one big experience with it, which is how you play the game and enjoy the game, it's just fantastic. They've just got this really good job of making it so addictive and interesting to see and explore all of these things. And part of
there's a lot of content.
Yeah.
There is a lot of content. It's not I remember when we played Fallout 4 for the first time, we were doing different side quests and we did the main story, and we're yeah, this is cool. Obviously Fallout 4 had some issues, but we quickly realized oh, I've done all the side quests. Whereas with Starfield, you just keep finding more of them, and knowing that after, that's the thing, particularly why I'm not really rattled by the Starfield hate, because I know it's a good game, because I've played it. You know, if I felt like it was a bit more of a 7 out of 10 thing, but I'm like, oh, I just like it, and then everyone else hated it, I'd be a bit more like, oh, maybe it is bad. But now I'm just like, oh, I don't care. Like, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But like, it's a good game, and if it'll be the same people who said, you know, Outer Worlds was a 9 out of 10, will go and give Starfield a 7 out of 10. And don't get me wrong, like, Outer Worlds is a cool game, and obviously it had a smaller budget and all of that, but if you just look at them as two separate games and you had to pick one to play, it's like, dude, Starfield is clearly a superior game. And we would know. We've played hundreds of hours of both. We've made full essay videos dissecting the Outer Worlds. Like, we're very aware of what these things offer.
Yeah, like, I felt compelled to write, like, the Outer Worlds not as good as you think video after, because I was like, damn, like, after you actually play that through, you realize it's a very small game. It's very tight. It feels like a weekend experience. Whereas, like, the idea...
A good weekend experience.
Yeah, it's a good...
But it's not the Fallout killer, or, you know...
Yeah, and the idea... Like, I do think that Fallout 76 absolutely damaged Bethesda's reputation, and, you know, absolutely due where it's due. Like, it was a shitty game. but like...
Yeah, 100%.
That
100%.
affected...
And as soon as we realized that, we said that.
Yeah.
And it was the same with Cyberpunk. As soon as we played Cyberpunk through together, I mean, Cyberpunk's looking pretty cool now, but when we played it through, both doing separate things, picking different choices and realizing,
and at launch,
it's all essentially the game, the same, and it's not what they said it would be in many different areas. We made a video covering that, and we're going into Starfield thinking this is going to be boring or meh or like, not that good. Like, I went in the least... Both of us went in the least, like, Bethesda fanboy tier. We're like, oh, let's see. And it does have a slow start too. So going into it, I wasn't... Like, if you tell me you've played 2 hours of Starfield and it's the best game you've ever played, I don't believe you. You're not like at the level to say that yet. Because it does start slow. Like, I treat that as skeptical as I treat someone who's played an hour and says it's a bad game. You can't tell that it's a really good game until you've played more of it.
Yeah, I think... too, like, coming from us, like, we were, like, especially me, I was very cynical on Starfield overall. Like, I thought it was kind of going to be pretty damn bad. And the big thing behind it is, like, I had big concerns with the actual, like the world building and all of the sort of aesthetic variety. I thought it was just going to be spacesuits and walking on the moon and stuff. And within the constraints of this sort of NASA punk sort of aesthetic and like, feel of the world, they've actually done an amazing job. Like, as a sci-fi game, there's actually... if you're just writing it down on paper... I would think it sounds pretty boring. But once you actually see the variety of things that are there and so on, I'm actually fully enraptured in the world. I'm pretty into it right now.
There's so much to see and do in the game. And I suppose one of the things is, though, like, and I can empathize with game devs wanting to put people on the railroads, right? Because everyone says, take me off the railroads, take me off, let me do whatever I want to do. And then they just go do unexciting things. And you see reviewers going like, look, I'm in space, I'm orbiting a barren rock. I go on it, it's a barren rock. I climb to the top of a barren mountain and there's no secret gun on the top. And it's like, yeah, because you can go and do that if you want to, but it doesn't mean that's particularly fun. You know what I mean? Like, there's a bad way to play Starfield. And there's a good way to play Starfield, and that's a good thing. You know, if you can embrace the role-playing experience and go out and actually see the planet diversity that's there. Like, there are tons of planets filled with life, and sometimes you will see a lot of similar-looking life, and you think, oh, it's just all randomized. And then you'll play 10 more hours, or 20 more hours, and every single hour you're finding new aliens, different environments, crazy things like a fox mixed with a bat, or a giant flying pufferfish-looking thing, or an invisible dinosaur. Like, you name it, there's tons of really cool stuff.
It's one of the things, there's this like sort of disconnect between what I suppose like the fans want and then even understanding that they're getting what they want. So for example, we're big on role playing and we like to, in an open world, be able to feel like it feels sensible to go and approach and do all these different things. Like, it's one of the complaints we might have had with Skyrim or Fallout 4, that there is always this intense sense of urgency, like, quick, save Skyrim from the dragons. Oh, there's a dragon coming, quick, go. Same as Fallout. It's like, quick, save your son. Like, at the time, you don't know he's an old dude yet, and you're like, oh, quick, like, you got to save your young son. But that urgency kind of helps to push the player and railroad them through the main, and it doesn't feel as natural to then go in and see all the side stuff. Whereas now they've actually addressed those claims in Starfield. The story they've given you is really patient and actually gives you so much opportunity to go and invest and investigate all these different factions and side quest stuff without feeling like, oh, it's silly because like, you know, you've got dragons.
The dragons are here.
Yeah. So
the main story is slower, but rushing it is the worst advice too. Like I see that was it Pete Hines on Twitter saying like, oh, the game starts when it ends, and I'm like, dude, like that's bad advice. Like just don't. Like for some people will like it. Like we won't go into all the details on like New Game Plus and stuff. We have a video on that if you're interested, because Scott went crazy on the New Game Plus mode and made a is it worth it video all about it. But in general, take your time. The start of the game, it's a bit contrived, obviously getting you kind of into Constellation, and it does start slow, as we said. And the other thing about the game, it can be a bit overwhelming at first. Like there's a lot of systems. The menus aren't like, I mean, I'm a beast at going through the menus fast now, but at the start, I found like, you know, it's a bit hard to navigate. Like going to planet, I'm pressing back, now it's zooming out into universe view from the planet view, and I just wanted to get out of the menu and go in the game. You know, all that kind of stuff. And some of the NPCs you see in New Atlantis do feel like a bit of a step down. You do see some pretty funny looking ones with haircuts that don't look like they match and funny facial expressions. But the NPCs that you actually talk to, the ones you get quests from, you know, the guards, people that you actually interact with are all pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All the civilian, the stuff that they're like pointing out in a lot of these things, and they've got to fix it. But it's the crowds that look shit. like the actual NPCs you interact with are all really good. But speaking of NPCs and the main quest, you kind of get not railroaded into it, but you join Constellation essentially, and this is where you have the 4 main companions, like Sarah Morgan, Barrett, Samco, and Andrasia. And Vasco's not, he's a robot. He doesn't have the same kind of interactions as those, and they're the ones you get the like and dislikes pop up for, and they've got heaps of voice dialogue interactions in the story and the main like the faction quest lines as well. So it's really good, and it pops up in side quests all the time. They've got a lot of detail, but the other companions are more like kind of like a Skyrim tier 1, like there's 16 or something. But one of the things,
to be fair, they actually have more dialogue though. Like you can, like even when you find these random ones, you can still ask them about their backstory, and they'll have a whole. But like that's one of the things I have to say. There's a lot of dialogue in Starfield. They've done dialogue really well to the point where, like compared to previous BGS games, like I can't go and compare it to different styles of games like Baldur's Gate 3. But if you compare it to previous BGS games that we all love, there's way more dialogue, and it raises the bar in the sense that you actually will look at things, be like, oh, why wasn't my background like dialogue option here? You know, you've had all these cool speech checks popping up all the time for backgrounds, traits, different skills you have, and you get spoiled and you're like, oh, why wasn't it there? But when you actually like look back at, you know, how much it is there, and how, you know, Bethesda didn't do this in games like Skyrim, which people will say, you know, is the best role-playing game, or it's so good for role-playing different characters. Like, they've really gone out of their way here with the backgrounds, the traits, and things like that. And just the dialogue and the writing's good. Like, if you say something silly to someone that seems just like a generic thing, sometimes they'll be like, okay then. Like if you say some Marvel movie tier thing, like sometimes you'll be treated like you said a Marvel movie tier thing.
Well, that was so good. I think that instance was with Sam Coe, and it was some line about making my anxiety feel really bad or something. It was in one of his it was during the course of the main quest, I think. But it was I forgot verbatim what it was, but it was essentially like cringe. Like, don't say that. Like, it was like, and I felt
which
cringe.
Is funny coming from him, because I reckon Sam Coe says cringe stuff all the time. I think I do like him as a companion, and I think a lot of the companions, the main 4 particularly, they're pretty good when you do their quests and you figure them out. Like, you know, Sarah can obviously be pretty preachy. And she can, you know, there's this one faction choice you can make at one point which feels fully legitimate, which she trashed me for, which I didn't like at all. But outside of that, if you actually do their quests, they're decent. The problem, if we want to talk about a flaw real quickly, with companions in Starfield, is that there aren't any like morally bad companions that they put the same effort into as these ones from Constellation. Like, there's no, You can have like your pirate companion, evil kind of people who will go with you, and they're all down to do the morally grey stuff, but they won't have all the extensive dialogue when you rock up on a planet and they tell you a story about once you were there, or they dynamically like butt into a conversation you're having in a quest, and they have something to say about it. Or they don't have their own side quests and things like that. That's something I would want to change. I hope in DLC they do introduce like a character who's as fleshed out, but also morally grey.
Yeah, I think out of the main cast, like they're all very ideologically aligned. At best, you're going to get is a slightly grayer, no bullshit kind of approach to things,
which you'd expect. They're all part of the same faction too. Like,
yeah, but they've got different faction backgrounds and stuff. Like it should be, and I understand the reason. Like you're obviously not going to have some full-on, fully voiced pirate type companion involved with the main story, because that's the other thing. All of the other companions, as by being part of Constellation, have an involvement or some sort of buy-in with Constellation as an organization, so that they're also bought into the mission of Constellation, which is kind of like the course of the main story. But I think I would have liked it if they just had one character that could be really, morally not good to fit in. Because essentially like this, it's like if you're going to be like a bad character in this, you may as well not bother with the companions. Like with the main cast companions.
Don't even put them on your ship, because when you get back after doing some naughty activities, they're gonna tell you off, and it's a bit of a buzzkill. So I just fully dismiss them. I don't have them as crew if I'm going to be doing those kinds of things. But if you're not doing those kinds of things, then having companions is actually pretty cool. The main story in general, I will say, it's good in the sense that there's stages to it, and I actually we both liked it. Like the ending and all the lead up to the end is all really cool. Like the whole second half of it is really cool. There's a stage in the middle that feels a bit calm, but that's what you would want in the sense that you go off and do the factions.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying before, is there's people ask for this thing, but then they get it and they don't like it because they're so used to maybe the railroad sort of system. Oh, it's not like crazy epic and in your face straight away. If anything, the UC Vanguard storyline is way more Hollywood than even the main story. But it's funny.
It's so cool too. We were avoiding that one, remember? It was like, oh, who's going to play it? I'm like, fine. I'll do the UC, because I don't know. I just got the impression it would be a bit I don't know,
boring. They took it in the most,
but it's cliche in a. I don't know. It's just good. It's good. It's high octane and it's fun. It's a pretty. If someone said that's the best faction you can play through, I wouldn't fault them for it at all. I'd be like, yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, actually. So speaking of factions, there's basically 4 main ones. There's the UC Vanguard, the Freestar Rangers, Ryogen Industries, and also the Crimson Fleet / SysDef. And this was actually something I thought was interesting. So Todd Howard's talked about before, I think it was on the Lex Fridman podcast, he was talking about how he likes a game design where people can experience everything if they want to. He doesn't feel like it's a good game where if 60% of the content can't be experienced by one person. And
which we have mixed feelings on based on previous games, but they did it pretty well.
Yeah, so I had I obviously prefer we're big on role playing here. I like choices and consequences and stuff like that. But the way that they've there's a few instances in this game where they've worked in a way to get the best of both worlds, and essentially one of them is when you start the Crimson Fleet kind of quest inadvertently, you're basically, I won't say too much, but essentially, I think Emil's even talked about it, but you're essentially in a situation where you're a double agent. So you can either play the Crimson Fleet questline as if you're working for SysDef as this sort of double agent, but you're experiencing the same things, but reporting back. So kind of almost like a Departed feel to it. Or you can obviously, flip and turn bad or whatever. But that way you can kind of complete those quests as a good guy who's struggling to be a double agent doing bad things, or you can just be someone just relishing in it like an actual pirate. But it's a way to give a character, so if my first character was completely morally good, but I could experience the same sort of content and see the same things in a different way, of course. But I feel like it is a cool game design.
It wasn't just, I'm going to go join the Dark Brotherhood now and just because I want to play and experience it. They have the kind of justifications there for why most characters can do most things. And because there's different ways to play him as well. Like that's the whole thing. Like you can go to a faction that you would think is just like a good guy faction, like the UC Vanguard, and you can, I won't say, but you can do some bad guy stuff. You can do some bad guy stuff, and you can do some good guy stuff. And maybe the Rangers don't have that as much, but you can still be like aggressive in your actions. Like you can still be pretty like stuff ya, bang bang, kind of in the vibe that you approach the missions and stuff.
No, I would say every single quest line has good choice and consequence. And two, like I find that some people's criticisms of things apply to games that they also love, but they don't acknowledge it. So, for example, real-time choices and consequences. So often they'll criticize like, oh, well, nothing changes or nothing happens or whatever in real sense. It's just like a little ending story card or something like that, like pick an ending kind of thing. But that's exactly what happens for 90% of what New Vegas's stuff is, which is hailed as like the RPG of RPGs. And by the way, I agree. I love Fallout New Vegas. But in this instance, this is completely on par in terms of the choice and consequence for the most part, I think.
Yeah,
and in
because
terms
it's about the role play.
The ending. Yeah.
Like, it's not like everything needs to... Like, if you do something and you choose to screw someone over for some reason and get some different reward at multiple times or, like, throughout the game, like, many times, like, all different micro and medium scale choices you can make, that's called role-playing. Like, it's not like everything has to spread out and, like, because I told this beggar to get lost... I have a different ending.
Yeah, I think too, it's something that Cyberpunk, for example, promised initially is that the backgrounds would have a big influence, and they ended up just being majority flavor text things. But I found in this, with a background or a skill, and with a skill check or a background check or even trait checks, I've actually had tangible progress, or like I've been able to like, you might circumvent certain other outcomes or requirements or someone entirely. Like, I found a lot more instances of the game actually recognizing it, and then you're rewarded for it as well, rather than just saying it and it's just, oh, that's a cool dialogue option I could say.
I save scummed at one point just to test something, but I used like theft, like pickpocketing, to do something crazy. Like, I won't say what, but like I did something like, whoa, like some really bad thing. And the dialogue options come up all the time, as we said. Like in quests, you would be like, yeah, you're achieving the same objective or same one of two objectives, but you're achieving them in different ways.
Yeah. I just, like, this would be cool, but like if anyone is saying that this has poor role-playing or poor choice and consequences, I just can't, I don't think you've actually played it extensively enough to make that call. Oh, for sure.
You can't use hours.
But like, it's just, it's honestly, it is just actually, it's a really good, I'm not even saying like, you don't have to make the claim that it's the best or anything like that. And then obviously some people's experiences of role-playing or choice and consequence, there can be a game, for example, with lots of choice and consequence, but you might dislike the writing or the setting or the whatever. But those are separate kind of
or it's top
metrics.
Down, or it's like, it's just completely different to a BGS game. So when you compare it to BGS games or Fallout New Vegas being an Obsidian title, but you compare it to these games, it's up there. Like that's. There's no doubt about it. And, it's not even just show me your hours. Like, that was the other thing, too. Like, a lot of the reviews came out, they're like, I've played 40 hours. And I'm like, you haven't played enough. And I know that sounds weird. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was having a good time after 40 hours. If you asked me, I'm like, yeah, the game's good. But you just get that conviction. You see it for real. This game is good after you sink in enough time in it. And if you take the role-playing seriously, don't go and call your character Blueberry and shrink the neck down and give yourself some crazy expanded, like forehead and make a joke character running around skipping dialogue.
Like anything.
And be surprised you have a bad time.
It's like if you were to sit there through a movie and then you just start making comments about it and looking for things to deride and so on, instead of trying to just immerse yourself in the experience. Like if you're already set up to hate it, like you're not going to have a good time.
You know how they say like, oh, show receipts, but like, show quest log.
Well, dude,
show me a quest log, because some people as well, and I know some, they've played 60 hours, but they've done nothing. They just enjoyed building outposts and exploring and building a spaceship and getting resources and doing that. And that's a completely valid way to play. I'm just like, if you haven't played all the factions and quest lines and all this stuff, then you just don't know that the stuff's there and it keeps coming.
It's one of the weird critiques that I see with these types of games. Like, everyone knows these are huge games with so much stuff and so much content, all these different things you can see. And obviously, the trade-off for from a game design perspective, when you make a game that's all big and open world and the content's spread out everywhere, is that the people might not see the right content. But then people are like, oh, I want the exciting experience. It has to be in my face. But then you'll also complain about, oh, well, now you're getting railroaded more because that's what a developer wants to do. They want to try and get you to see the best of the game. So they kind of like push you from A to B. But in these kinds of games, you want to be open, so you run the risk of potentially not seeing the best the game has to offer. But also, I will say, like, if you go back, people rating Skyrim 10 out of 10 and all of this kind of stuff, and granted, like, the standards of gaming change and so on. But imagine if you went and said like, oh, you can only play 20 hours of Skyrim. You would see nothing compared to the fullness of what Skyrim experience is. So rating Skyrim on 20 hours is probably lower than rating it on like 50 hours, for, let's say, or more for that matter, and multiple playthroughs and all of this kind of stuff. That's where it's like, if you're playing Starfield, like if you playing for 10 hours and then you like think that it qualifies you to rate it on the fullness of the game, it's just, you're not going to be able to see all of it. But that's the risk you run when playing an open world game that's not going to direct you necessarily to all of the content straight away.
Like, I personally know people who've played it bad. And I'm like, well, what did you expect? And you're like, it's an RPG too. Like, you can't expect to start the game and like, you've got all these really good guns and you've got this beast spaceship that's like, because that's the thing too. The spaceship combat, especially with the Frontier, doesn't feel that great. But when you actually build like a really cool ship, like we've showed off in videos before, you start having a better time. And I mean, that's on brand for an RPG, right?
Personally, I don't actually feel like it's the actual like controls layout or anything. I think it's just the learning curve to it, because like, I mean, personally, like, you know, I've played like shooters and action games, all this kind of stuff, but I haven't played a lot of flying games. I typically don't like, or that kind of thing. And especially when your ship has all these low stats and so on at the beginning, it's just kind of like jarring. It says, oh, here's another system later, because that's one of the things, I can't remember if we mentioned it or not, but it can be very overwhelming. You get a lot of systems. The UI is kind of clunky in navigating between maps and stuff, and even just your own inventory and so on. But then it's like, oh, here's how to outpost build. Here's how to ship build. Here's how to ship fly. Here's how like weapons work, or how what we're looking for in the main story. And oh, you can join this, and it's very like full on at the start. And I can see how and it depends on like what people are focusing on. It's funny, but like, I know I didn't actually really notice that all of the citizen NPCs were augmented until I started really looking at them, because like I was playing
like
more
their mannerisms and stuff.
Yeah, I was looking more RPG kind of thing. Like, I'm just going to the different stories, the quests, and like the people that I can talk to and see and interact with. I wasn't really sitting there looking at the scenery, which is essentially what most of the citizens are there for. It's to emulate the feel of I'm in a huge bustling city. Which I will say as well,
speaking of which, the cities are good. Like, the cities are good. And when you go into them, like, I think we even said in the initial review, you were saying basically like, oh, it is more hub-based. It doesn't feel exactly like, you know, you can still walk out of cities into the like natural environments and stuff, but it feels a little bit different. And it does, however, it's way more connected and stuff than you think. Like, it's way more of a BGS game than it initially feels. Like, as soon as you start picking up things, like rotating the items, like decorating your ship, and running around cities and like boost packing onto things. Get a boost pack, you have to. Just get boost pack training. And you go around and I don't even take the train anymore in New Atlantis. I just sprint around, and I mean, I can fast travel between the areas I need to go to when I'm doing quests and stuff, but I will just run and boost pack down from one district to another and hop across the trees. And you realize, and like, you know, running on the roof of Neon, you realize that, oh, I actually can just go everywhere. Like, it's just whether the boost pack lets you.
Yeah, I think, it's one of the most jarring things for most people coming in is how it seems more hub-based, and there is a lot more menu hopping in traveling and stuff between places and so on.
I think this is a good point to just put in here. Like, we both, we actually bought our like brand new PCs right for Starfield launch, and they're good PCs, and like we've had a good time. So I can't, like, you know, if you're running it on a older PC and you're having a bad time, like I can't speak to that. You know, that sucks if that's happening to you, but it's not happening to us. I mean, we've had some glitches, but nothing really that game breaking, mostly just little visual things. And as BGS game veterans, we're like, haha, look, their hand got stuck in the door just like the goblin did in Oblivion. Like, we don't really care as much as long as it doesn't give me a quest I can't finish or like something like that, which we haven't had.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of, if you're going into Starfield as like someone who's enthusiastic about RPGs and Apple games and also have a history, understand Fallout 4 and Skyrim and what you're going in for, then I think you'll like it. I think there's a big difference, and I actually think it's so weird. I forget about this, but the console war stuff, like PS5 versus Xbox and so on. But I'm like, oh, why is everyone so mad? It's like, but that it does make a lot of people seethe, and I'm like, it's crazy to me. I'm like, you know, it's annoying if you've only a PlayStation kind of person and stuff like that. But I mean, that kind of bias has always existed. I remember in high school, like, people were flipping out. And understandably, I can know you said because the Dawn Guard DLC and stuff were delayed on PlayStation and the bugs were worse on PlayStation for Skyrim. And like, just, there was always like less support there and so on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. It's just obviously having a PC. I'm not experiencing the inability to play Starfield, but yeah, I also agree. I completely forget that stuff like that exists. Like, I'm so removed from like console wars or like, oh, this is my team and that's your team. I'm like, dude, I'm just playing games. I'm just enjoying myself.
One other thing to sort of bring it back to some of the like the dialogue and gameplay stuff. One thing that's really cool I noticed a lot in the dialogue. They've done such a big effort with it, and I found lots of situations where they reference other things you've done, or there is dialogue that is suitable if you've done certain things in a certain order, and stuff like that, rather than the situation where like you're the harbinger or not the harbinger of the companions, but like you're the dragonborn, you've defeated Al and all of this kind of stuff, and then you go to do the companions and join them for the first time, and you're like whelp straight away. Like, there's no way you can tell them that, like, or have it recognized in audio. And there's a few instances like that even with your actual background and stuff as well. Like, you say
For
something,
sure.
they'll say, well, like,
And I mean, that's one of the, it's weird though, because that's what I was talking about before when I was saying it can almost feel like a flaw sometimes. And I suppose it is, but it's that like, my standards have been changed as I'm playing this game I'm enjoying. Because sometimes it's not there. Like, there were some times where I'm like, oh, why can't I say I'm this? But then there's all these other times I can say it. So I kind of like let it off the hook. I'm like, well, this is a huge step up from the previous BGS games I've played. Like, it's pretty good.
Well, that's one of the things. It's like, especially living in a world where there's so much like critique. There is so much. There's like video essays on everything. There's reviews everywhere from everyone. And there's so much in all facets of life. There's so much back and forth, and like, you know, the picket lines drawn and you're on the other side and I hate you, yada yada, all of this kind of stuff. But with this like critique heavy mindset, I find that it's very easy for people to move the goalposts constantly. Like, so for like, which I feel I haven't done that with Starfield, but my goalposts were kind of like, I want basically Skyrim in space with way more role-playing and choice, and I want it to be a compelling world with lots of cool aesthetic options and build potential in different playstyles. And to me, it checks all of them. I'm like, sick or whatever. But I could move the goalposts. It's like, oh, well, you did all these things, but like, I'm going to make it for you. Oh, you didn't do this. The space combat wasn't as amazing as XYZ, or that, you know, this RPG thing could have been way better. It's like, there's always room for improvement on every single aspect. And that's not coping of going like, oh, it's going from bad or whatever. Like, I would say that the writing is good all along, across the whole thing, honestly. Like
generally speaking, like, there are some times where like, and it's funny because again, start of the game, there's a trait option at the start of the game where basically you reference like, oh, blah 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 of our entire faction, and I was kind of like, oh, like, people don't really speak like that. That feels a bit like gamey. But then, like, that was it. I'm like, oh, all the other dialogue's good. Like, it's... I can see it making a bad first impression on some people who just hop in and quickly have a go. But as soon as I hopped in, you know, and as I said, we came in very skeptical. I just went from like, oh, yeah, it's all right, to, oh, it's actually good. Oh, it's pretty good, but they probably didn't do this. Oh, they did do this. Oh, dude, do you think this game's actually really good? And we're like, I'm serious. We're going along going, oh, wow. Like, I keep thinking that I'm about to realize that I did all the things and it's actually shallow and it was all just smoke and mirrors as far as the RPG elements go. And it's kind of like, it's not. It's like, oh, it is there. This is actually pretty good. And there's so many, like, even the Radiant stuff, because that's funny, but, like, the Radiant stuff's pretty good, too. You shouldn't just do Radiant stuff. You should mix it in with the factions and the main story. But if it suits your character, like, if you're a bounty hunter and you go and do the bounty hunter Radiant content to get XP and credits and, have a fun adventure because you get sent to a location to loot, you have a good time. And the locations, I think we've realized now, they're handcrafted locations that randomly get chosen, and sometimes, like, there's minor variations on them. But there's actually a lot of them. And one of the things, again, this is just like unlucky, but I think you can get unlucky and it's possible to see the same location like twice, like maybe early. But if I'm seeing the same location twice after playing 120 hours, which is when I saw the same location twice, so what? Like, I kind of didn't really care at that point. I'm like, well, there can't be unlimited of these Radiant locations. The other thing is too, though, when you do the mission content, like particularly bounty hunting and stuff, you often get sent to the same kind of places. If you hop around, like I'm like 200 hours, in, I'm still finding new locations. Like, you'll find these big, like, farm warehouse things, or these pharmaceutical labs with like biological things in big containers, and there are or robot shipyards or Deimos scrapyard, or like there's a lot of actual stuff to mix in.
I can understand I can understand like people being frustrated with it, especially if you got unlucky and it happens early. But like for me, it might have been because I was doing a lot of planet exploring, like around maybe the 70-hour mark when I first saw a second thing, which is, by the way, really deep. And I was playing like an explorer character, like I was going around exploring lots of different planets. And maybe earlier on you don't actually notice it, because it's like if you take the same kind of construction and put it in a different biome, it might feel different overall, and you don't really like pick up on it straight away. But honestly, when you compare the amount and also the variability that you can get, because even having that same location, a different biome, it does actually keep it relatively fresh for those Radiant missions. I would rather, instead of getting a bounty mission in Skyrim and being sent to Valheim Towers, and like if you've seen our Skyrim builds before, that was one of our favorite places to run through and show the build off. But we've been to Valheim Towers a lot. It's pretty fresh to have Valheim Towers in a tropical forest, and then in a snow planet, and then in somewhere else or so, like that kind of construction. And also with different enemies, not just bandits or something. It'll be, at least you got like pirates.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that's not like the mainstream experience at all. That's just something that can happen after you play a lot. And again, like if all you're doing is exploring these like Radiant locations, then sure. But you're mixing it in with all the faction stories, all the side quests, which just keep coming, the random encounter type quests, because there's actually a lot of random encounter type quests. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm on the party ship. I'm going to tell the bartender or the captain or whoever to disable the gravity, and we're all floating around. And like, there's heaps of things and quests that you just fall into and just find. And they're well written. Some of them are wacky and they give you like Fallout vibes, and they're good. The
Radiant stuff is some of the things I was actually really surprised about, because I think going into it, like I was as concerned as everyone and as cynical as everyone about Starfield before it came out. And I thought things like exploration would be some of the worst parts of it, because I'm like, oh, it's going to be meaningless or whatever. But I actually ended up doing it and I had so much fun. It is more... I would say more fun if you're speccing more specifically into the exploration things to make some of the things a bit easier.
Skills. They make life easier.
But I had so many cool random experiences or just encounters like with an alien, or like even just seeing something like fly down and attack another creature, and I entered this, or a time when I was like running away from pirates and then getting another creature to come and help me defeat this big heavy pirate with some big weapon. That kind of experience is really, really cool. And there's so many things I came across. I just had to laugh about it. But I went to there was a Radiant mission of some like survivalist guy that was downed, and I helped him and gave him a med pack.
Same thing.
And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'll take you back. And then I realized it's like 1,000 meters plus or something. And I'm like, oh damn, okay, well I guess I'll do it. And I get to like 300 meters away or something like that, and then there's just this herd of animals come by and just absolutely swipe him out. Like, and it was just like, but it was one of those moments where it's like, it almost felt cool and like cinematic and scary because they like jumped out from behind this thing, but I was also like, damn, wasted a med pack on that guy. You know, like, but there are so many little instances like that, like just little beautiful moments. It is still so enjoyable, I think, to go around, and I think the idea that just because it's not permanent or it's like interchangeable, like going to the different places, I think sometimes too, when people are like, oh, every place is a barren rock, you just haven't played the game. Like there is so much environmental and animal diversity within the game. Like I was so surprised. This is one of the things.
You just went to barren rocks only thinking that you would just be handed some cool experience on a planet going to 10 different moons that all look white from the planet viewer. Like you can tell what it's going to be like going there.
Yeah, I legit had, I think I was still discovering new aliens. You sent me one that I hadn't even seen, and then I was still discovering them. Yeah, at like 100 hours plus on the one playthrough. And I'm sure there's still things. I've literally still been seeing new things because they've added in some really niche alien creatures, you might say. Because like I would see sort of like double up variation. So for example, there'll be like a Nautilus flying creature. I have seen smaller versions of it, and I've seen a bigger, larger version of it, and you'll see things with different color patterns and stuff like that on some of the different biomes, or even sometimes on the different planets, and they might inhabit different roles. So you might have like a Hamasaur type thing that's like a herder one, and then there's other thing that's like an apex predator type one. But I'm still in amongst that seeing completely unique things. I just get taken by surprise. I'm like, damn, that's awesome. Like, and I was playing a committed explorer character. Like I had been to every system, and I'd been to usually at least one of the like life-bearing planets in any of the available systems. But then sometimes it's like, I remember going to one where it was like this like cool like tropical beach thing with these like bone frill monsters and stuff like that. And then I started to set up my base, and then I went to another planet in the same system, and then I'm like, it actually had like less life technically on it, like from the scan. But I go there, and there was like these it was like a savanna kind of thing with these invisible click beetle cricket things with like a camo on them and all those flying Norse creatures. It was such a cool vibe, and that's what I first got.
Or like stone creatures too. Like you can find some creatures that look like they're made of rock. The other thing is, while you're exploring, I will say that Starfield has a good soundtrack as well.
Oh yeah,
like the music. There's some pretty nice music that you'll be listening to. Like some of it obviously feels way more like Fallout type, but then occasionally you'll get a song that's more like Star Wars. Vibe.
There's definitely, you can tell like the influences that are in there, but it's actually a really good like final product. Like if you actually really immerse yourself in Starfield, Skyrim in space, but it's a really sick game. Like I'm actually so happy with it. I haven't felt this enthusiastic about a game since Skyrim, I think, honestly. Like Fallout 4 was a big one, and I really liked it, but there were a lot more, I think, like core flaws that I recognized quicker in this, whereas I feel like a lot of the flaws with Starfield are things that can be addressed, but also feel like, or at least not for me, they're not super important. Like I was going in
for sure, like the ship flying freedom of like, I want to be able to fly down and land on a planet, and Todd made it sound like I could do that, is like kind of like, okay, like fair enough if that's your thing, but it's not the thing on Fudge Muppet.
As one gripe, the actual only one time that I've been hard let down by Starfield is with Unarmed. I was like absolutely gobsmacked at how shit it is. Like with even just the trade-off for it, because I'm like, oh cool, they've got like 3 different skills which you can invest to which affect Unarmed, so maybe if you invest lots into it, it'll pay off and it'll actually get really good. But nah, it's really shit.
Well, they'll tell you in the comments you need concealment for 10x damage while they're stunned, but it's like,
so you can be
trust
on
me,
par.
Like it's a huge grind still, and feel not even on par with guns in terms of how fast you can just clear out a location.
It feels clunkier and so on, the animation. I was just disappointed that they didn't really factor in this part of things. And I understand it's a game in space, but like both in Skyrim it wasn't that great either. But in Fallout,
well, I don't like that excuse though, because I see that around where people go, oh well, what do you expect? It's realistic. I'm like, dude, nothing's more fun than using a power fist in a Fallout game, or like, and it's a sci-fi universe. Like, just give me some super zap glove that just, electrocutes them and sends them flying.
Yeah, but it's like, even like if you watch that the Unarmed Sucks video, if I'm punching a person in the head who's knocked out on the ground 30 times, I will kill them. Like, before then, like, people don't realize how
you mean in real life?
In real life,
you could kill someone fast.
You can kill someone with your bare hands, Like, if someone's on the ground and you stomp on their head, you can kill them. Like, multiple stomps on the head. So I'm sitting there, like, punching this guy. I'm supposed to be some, like, super unarmed, focused build, punching him for, like, for like 30 times.
Hey,
it's ridiculous.
But that's more realistic on a damage output basis to real life than guns, though, right? Because you can headshot someone in Starfield and they won't
can
die,
shake it off. Yeah.
Look, it's actually more realistic. It's better than the guns.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and it's just like I think when people say, "Oh, it's realistic," it's like game designers should pick and choose their realism to give the person the best experience. And there is a cool experience to being some sort of like martial artist in a world.
Because that's the thing. There's no
guns.
Animations either.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah.
And
Melee as well is actually completely doable. We were worried about Melee. Melee is really fun. The only issue we have with Melee, which you probably realized, is there's just a general lack of melee weapons. Like, we can talk about gear. There's actually a good range of aesthetics, especially like the apparel options, which you can pretty much just pick for role-playing purposes because they all confer small bonuses, basically. So you can kind of just pick which one you like the look of and then toggle off your spacesuit and helmet so that when you're walking around, breathable areas, you can, look how you want to look and have a kind of vibe with your outfit, whether you want to dress like a cowboy and be a gunslinger or have some stealth suit and feel like some kind of operative. Like, they've done a really good job with that. Melee, there's not enough melee. The melee weapons that are there can be cool, like the Wakizashi and the Varun Painblade, but there's just not enough options. So hopefully they add more melee weapons in the DLC.
Yeah, because there's basically only the rescue axe, and that's the only kind of axe heavier kind of weapon.
They need a
exists.
Two-handed barbarian looking axe.
Yeah, or something like. But yeah, they could expand those, and that's the thing too. The expansions, the gear variety and things like that through updates and stuff like that can be addressed and added. I've talked about it. They could maybe fix unarmed by adding in some like knuckles and things, or hopefully just a full overhaul. But like you're saying, just the visual component, all of the aesthetic variety, I was really happy with, even within the spacesuits themselves, because I was really worried, especially from some of the promotional stuff really early on. They were just, it just feels like I'm going to be Buzz Aldrin walking on the moon, and I'm like, oh, that does not sound like a fun setting for
sure,
an RPG.
And it's a problem that's how people play too. Like, I have such an issue with that. Like obviously you play however you want to play if you're enjoying it, but if you're not enjoying it, why are you wearing the Constellation spacesuit, flying the White Frontier around a white moon, doing nothing? I don't know, like scanning iron ore. Like, you can go and have fun with it and get colorful and creative. Like, the shipbuilding and stuff is so good.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is like speaking of that, it's like the shipbuilding is such a cool thing. If you're into role playing and character creation and so on, and we're doing this for all of our role playing builds, and I'm also doing some ship guide stuff as well. Is making awesome ships that fit the character is so cool. Like, for example, if you think of most sci-fi things, there is an iconic ship, whether it's like the Firefly series is the Firefly, or there's the Millennium Falcon or TIE Fighters or the X-Wing in Star Wars, or the Normandy in Mass Effect, or I'm not a Star Trek guy, but the Star Trek ship, the Enterprise, that's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The point is that the ship and this sort of idea of a hub and a crew is always really crucial. Or the Ebon Hawk in Knights of the Old Republic. I love being able to create that for myself. Like, but your own unique way. There are so many cool variations, and also some of that are just like, that flavor aesthetic thing that is just like, I can walk in and I'm like, oh, I've got my character is a heavy guns character, so I've got like, a big armory right here, and he likes to eat, so there's the big mess hall right there. It's important that my ship has one because he likes to eat with his friends and companions or whatever. Or you can play like, I'm a bounty hunter, a super efficient, I just have that captain's quarters and a brig, and then it's really built like an L shape with big engines on the side, like some Star Wars sort of ship. Or you can be like, there's so much cool variation. I'm really glad they put so much into it. And the other note too is there's lots of cool outposting stuff you can do, but I love how it's basically not forced on you at all. You can play and that shipbuilding has nothing to do with it. That was a big cross out. Like, I did not find appealing the idea of having to build ship parts by like gathering together iron and nickel and electronic things. I'm so glad it's all just money based, honestly. So I like
Speaking of which,
separate.
they've done a good job with like the money system, I reckon, in the game. Like, it's a decent balance between like save. Obviously, you'll get super rich later, and there are outpost things that are so exploity and abusable if you just want to get rich and be level a zillion. However, generally speaking, they've done a good job with like, there's things to spend the money on. Like in Skyrim, generally you'd like make your build, you'd have your character, and you'd just hoard septums, but there wasn't a whole lot to spend it on. Whereas in Starfield, there's lots of things. Like, you can buy big ships constantly. If you ship build a lot, you actually churn through a lot of credits, like putting on different parts, changing things around. I mean, you can go and buy like expensive player homes. Like, there's just and guns. There's a lot of cool guns where, like, as you may have noticed, there are like actual uniques in the game in terms of items, but there is a very different feel even to Fallout in terms of just how frequent this like tiered weapon system is, like rare, epic, and legendary stuff that you find around the place. However, it's still unlikely that you're going to find the exact model thing you want with the exact effect you want, which makes buying guns actually feel worth it. Like, I've talked about how I bought Boom Boom from Neon in Neon Tactical, and that's an explosive shotty. It has a chance to, you know, shoot explosive rounds, and especially if you're not into like weapon modification, you don't have to be at all. Like, you can just buy things or find things that already have mods. Anyway, it's got 20 like bullets that you can shoot, or shells, and like, they're explosive all the time, like very frequently. It'll be like bang, 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 explosive, bang, bang, explosive. And I'm just running around gunning. Like, I'm so happy I bought this, you know, new shiny thing. My experience is enriched because of it. Like, I don't feel like, oh, I could just find that. Like, you probably won't find a shotty with the explosive effect.
One other thing that's interesting there that it feels like they've addressed or have listened to the community. So, like, I know we've personally complained about it before in things, is sort of a concern more so for like being able to choose, not being forced into like kind of the best weapon. And obviously there are like the best, and there's always going to be the best, but
particularly with melee, there's some best ones.
Yeah, but having this tiered upgrade system of, I think it goes it's either calibrated, refined, and advanced, or refined and advanced. Like, I can't remember if refined and calibrated swapped or whatnot, but the point is, I can have a gun that I might really like early on, and I mean, like, oh yeah, I love this Razorback revolver, but the idea before it kind of sucks when some of these iconic, like, or there's really cool weapons for the vibe of the character then become, you know, redundant. But now with the leveled tier systems, it's like I can actually feasibly have later level characters still use the kind of gear that I like, that fits the vibe, because I can just get a better, higher damage version of it. To be fair, I don't know. Some people have said, like, I wish that this could be like a modded thing, that you could like find some way to level up your weapons or like have them leveled to you. And I don't know. I wonder if there is a reason they've done it, and it's probably to keep you kind of looking for things. Like, if it's very easy to set your gear up and get everything, it kind of like cuts the gameplay loop short of like looting. And because you'll often find, if you've got your character that's like maxed out, you got heaps of creds, you got all the cool armor and stuff you want, you kind of stop, or at least I do. I stop looting bodies as much. I stop looting the bits and pieces as much. But yeah, go on.
I'll tell you what though, because of that, I've actually had a better time. So I've parted with old guns and used new ones that I thought I wouldn't enjoy. And it's literally just inertia. Like, it's just Stockholm Syndrome. You just love the gun you've been using. And then it becomes my new favorite gun. Or it becomes my new favorite spacesuit. Or my new favorite boost pack. Like, there's heaps of times where I kind of like, I don't know if I'd say reluctantly, but kind of reluctantly upgrade, because I'm like, yeah, it's just better, isn't it? And I've got this tough mission I need to do, and then I'm like, I like this. This is actually a vibe. This is pretty cool, because there's also a skill curve with, you know, different types of guns and stuff, and you get good at using one, but when you get good at using other ones, then you start, you know, liking them a lot more, particularly as you're just smashing through a location, like, oh, this is sick. And there's a decent range of guns. Like, I wouldn't say it's like, there could be more, but I wouldn't say there's like not enough. Maybe with laser weapons,
but to be fair though, like, I feel like the range is actually pretty damn good. Like, if you want to compare it even to Fallout, obviously you can mod the same thing into different pistols or whatever, like the plasma laser thing. But for most things, they've got like, I mean, especially in ballistic weapons, there's just heaps of options. But yeah, I think overall it's pretty good. And in terms of like people talk about uniques and stuff, and of course in games like Elder Scrolls series where it's like you've got these iconic, legendary, gifts from the Daedric princes or things like that. It's got that sort of X Factor feel. Whereas if you go to Fallout, it also has that in some regard. But when you go back and analyze it critically, like, oh yeah, that 9mm pistol Maria, the unique one in Fallout New Vegas, is basically just a slightly better reskinned 9mm pistol, which is cool and everything. But this also has it. For example, like Deadeye has like the same similar kind of like filigree kind of stuff on a Razorback, but you almost feel like, is this worthwhile, like calling it? Is it the same as a unique or whatever? Sometimes I feel like it's actually just a sort of a nostalgic attachment to certain things that you
don't get me wrong, I'm all for more unique weapons being in the game, but I guess I wouldn't say that I feel like I'm missing out in terms of the gear. Like, I'm often finding cool stuff where I'm like, this is a cool piece of gear, I like this, and you will find different skinned things around the place. So, you can definitely have fun with the gear in this game. And I think, we've talked about the skills, but we probably could say a little more. The skills are pretty good. Like, the skill system in general, like the whole rank up thing, it's like a combination of Skyrim and Fallout in the sense that you level by doing, but that's only for the ranks. You get XP just by like killing things, completing missions, and things like that. But then to earn it, you still have to, Dude, do the thing.
I actually kind of love it now. Weirdly,
yeah,
like,
it's good.
Especially
it's good.
Like writing out, because we're like working on all these different builds and stuff. We've released one, the Gunslinger. But you actually really do have to. It adds a little extra component of strategy. You do need to think about timing. It's not just like getting your XP and therefore you will, the time's now because you've leveled up or not. But it's also not like sort of Skyrim where it's completely like you can only place them as you go kind of thing. Well, it's a little bit of halfway in between, but the point is it's like it adds a sort of, without making it entirely tedious like this sort of Skyrim, I've just got to bang away and keep on training this thing. It adds in the challenge, but you've got to sort of, there's a fine balance between like going wider with your skills to sort of level them up multiply, or like even into one tree so that you can access the later things sooner, because that might be a bigger advantage, so you can get those challenges and rank it up quicker. And there's a few like things in there, and I also do actually quite like how, for the most part, there is a good spread of skills. Like, it doesn't feel as if there is like typically a whole skill group that you could ignore, because usually a lot of them there's at least like one or two things that would fit your build from them, but you have to.
And a lot of them do change the gameplay as well.
Yeah.
Like, I noticed, and it's a fair critique sometimes. People say like, oh, like basic skill mechanics are locked behind a skill like stealth, for example, like seeing if you're detected or not. But then I'm just like, you can still sneak. Like, I did. Like, I played through Ryujin without having the stealth skill, and I kind of was just like extra cautious. And I mean, actually, as a flaw, I think they could improve the stealth system in terms of like, more like where you're not supposed to be, like have more trespassing zones, because there are some places where I felt like, oh, I feel like people should be calling me out for being here, but they don't care. But in general, it's like, maybe if you're not like stealthy as a character, you shouldn't know if you're detected or not, but you can still try. Or like, maybe if you, like, I can't pickpocket someone IRL. So, like, maybe you have to put a point into pickpocket to be able to pickpocket.
This is the double standard I kind of feel, but for example, like one that I'm familiar with is like everyone might go, oh, well, I've got a boost pack, why can't I use it, or something like that. But then, oh, I shouldn't have to unlock features of the game. But there'll be same people that will play some like, arcade type tier like platformer or something, and they'll be like, yeah, I unlocked a double jump or something like that, or I unlocked the
fire or they'll rag on Fallout 4 for allowing you to just jump in power armor without power armor training, because it's exactly this complicated advanced suit that you should know how to use before you can use power armor. Like in New Vegas, the real RPG, you had to get power armor training. And in this, it's like, well, maybe using, I mean, have you seen those jetpacks, the ones we have in real life? Like that one with the big hand rocket things you're flying around. Like, I'm sure that takes some training. I'm pretty sure if you strap that on anyone, they wouldn't just like fly around easily. And if you want to role play as a character that can use those things from the get-go, you can, because backgrounds confer starting skills. And when it comes to skills, you might think, oh, there's no role-playing, like, well, there are, but, like, role-playing skills that are just about your character, like, I don't know, Snarling Imperialist or Tribal Wisdom or something like that changes the vibe of your character. But that's what backgrounds are and traits. You get to start with them and immediately get to be like, I'm a gangster, I'm connected, don't mess with me. Or, like, I know insurance fraud, give me that and I can help you, or whatever it is, you know, like...
That's like you were saying, like we were just saying before, is it's like that's the moving of the goalpost kind of example. It's like they give you what they want. It's like, oh, I give you a main story that's not rushing you, and it's like, oh, well, now I don't like the main story. I want to be rushed, and then the next one, Elder Scrolls 6, they rush you, and then you're like, oh, I wish they didn't rush you so much. Like it just feels like you just change each time. It's like this is what I kind of feel like a lot of the time. I like that meme where it was like. It was something like game devs if they did what everyone wants, and it was like a pizza with a barbecue chicken slapped on it. Then there was like a cake and icing on one side, and just a monstrosity of a pizza.
M&Ms.
Yeah, like it just. But that's kind of how it feels sometimes.
Yeah, and look, Starfield's not a perfect game. Like, trust, like, if anyone knows the flaws, it's us. Like, it's not perfect. Like, it could be improved. But if you're saying that, you know, these games that we love, especially here at Fudge Muppet, the Fallout games, Elder Scrolls games, things like this, you like them, and you're like, yeah, like, to me, Skyrim's a 9 out of 10. It's like, well, Starfield's pretty damn good.
Well, yeah, I'd easily call Starfield
you might not
a 9
vibe
out of
it.
10.
Me too.
But like,
and you might not vibe it though.
Like, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's critically acclaimed movies that aren't your vibe. Like, you just don't click with. Like, there is the subjective component to it. But to then just claim, like, look, a 7 out of 10 is insane. The idea that Fallout 4 is an 8 out of 10 by IGN, and then like Outer Worlds is like a 9, and Places giving it 10. So like, Outer Worlds, like we said, is good, but it is like taking like 5 to 10% of Starfield and calling that an entire game. Like, it's just this,
again, obviously there's different budgets and potentially, you know, different expectations. But if you just said they're both free, you can pick which one you want to play. There is no way in hell you could tell me that Outer Worlds is like, yeah, pick that one. It's the better game.
It's sort of, yeah. And it's like people complain about like Reddit tier, like Marvel writing and so on. Mate, Outer Worlds is stacked with Reddit tier writing. Like there's good stuff in there too. Like Reddit tier Marvel stuff can be fun and good. It's just like because there is some in Starfield.
It's
but
proportional.
I would say,
it's proportional.
Yeah,
it's proportional.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, and anyway, that's what we think of Starfield. I think that we just have a high conviction that it's a good game. I think a lot of the issues that it has can easily be fixed, and I think it's the perfect game for DLC. I'm so keen to see more of the world, especially coming obviously from a strong Elder Scrolls background. Elder Scrolls obviously has many games to build the lore in, but you can already see, like, as a starting like entry into the Starfield IP, there's plenty of lore there, plenty of cool stuff. Yes, it won't feel as metaphysical about, you know, learning the truth about Lorcan or anything, but like, I think over time this can be made truly good, and it's the like truly good from a deep lore perspective where people consider it like a game with deep lore. Because at the moment I wouldn't say that there's deep lore. I'd just say, yeah, the lore's good.
Yeah, the
like,
lore's good, but the only reason it's not
sense,
deep is just because there's not as much. A lot of the deep lore in Elder Scrolls is that it's like a 5-6 game plus history, and yeah, but yeah, well. Yeah, the main story in this has there's a lot of outcomes and things and potential anyway. So like, yeah, there is a lot of potential.
I'm so
to
pumped for
expand on
DLC.
things and House Veron, they've got to be a DLC to expand. It's so much cool.
100%, 100%. And it's space, so you can just say, we found a star system that wasn't recognized on any star map.
Yeah.
Or we're going to head it just out of the system to go here. And like, you could just put places wherever you want.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you all for watching so much. We really appreciate all the support we've had on the channel recently. Like, there's tons and tons of support. And we're just pumped to be playing a new BGS game that's actually good. And we're just so happy that it's not bad. And like, we know it's not bad because we've just played so much.
In fact, it's great.
In fact, it's great. So thank you very much, and we'll be back to nerd out with you again very soon.